Hello. Good morning, everybody. If you're in a place where it's morning, good afternoon if you're in a place where it's afternoon, and good evening if you're in a place where it's evening. And welcome to another Tech Leaders Launchpad live stream. If you don't know me, I'm Andrew Murphy. I'm the founder of Tech Leaders Launchpad. And what I do is I help engineering leaders understand the skills and mindsets they need to succeed. When I became a tech leader 15 years ago, I went home Friday a senior engineer and came into work on Monday a tech lead, and nobody taught me the difference between those two jobs. I had to work everything out the hard way. I had to make the mistakes. There wasn't a large amount of resources out there to help me. And so I just had to try things the hard way. What I do now is I try and make sure you don't have to do things the hard way. One of the ways I do that is through these live streams where I share the people that I learn from, the people that I know from around the community that have great ideas, that have something to offer my audience, and that we can talk about this stuff together so that we can learn. And one of those people is Owen. Welcome, Owen, to the Tech Leaders Launchpad live stream.
Super excited to be here, Andrew.
Yeah, do you want to give the peeps at home a little bit of a background about you? You know what where you've come from, where you work now, and kind of use that as a little bit of a segue into this topic. You know, when we're talking about bringing somebody on the live stream, I try and ask them, what's important to them, what are the things they care about, what do they think tech leaders should learn to think about more, and this is the topic we kind of settled on. So yeah, just give the folks a sense of your background and why this topic is important to you.
Yeah, I can totally, absolutely relate to your leaving your job on Friday, um, an engineer, and coming into work on Monday, a manager, um, with no one um, telling you how these two things are different in any way, shape, or form. Um, and it turns out they are very different. Who would have guessed? And that the skills that make you a great engineer don't necessarily make you the best engineering leader, or even a tech lead, for that matter. And so, yeah, I've done that on a couple of occasions. Um, Very varied, sort of, career. Has always been in tech. Um, if I have to sort of like look at the red thread throughout my career, it has always been trying to trying to have more impact, right? Like how do I have more impact on the organizations that I'm in? And so when I started out as a dev, the way to do that was to become a better dev, right? And so you learn how to become a better developer, and so at some point I realized that um, there's a diminishing returns, to being a better dev. It takes a lot of time, um, and there's not an awful lot of effect. And that's when I realized that, as a tech lead, like if I taught other devs to be better devs in my team, like that would make a much bigger impact than me becoming a slightly better dev. And so, yeah, that's when I got started. That's when I realized that architecture was the problem, a bigger problem than code. And so I got into sort of architecture. Um, then I realized that the organizations that I was working in were dysfunctional. Um, so I did a lot with, like sort of agile, sort of back in the early sort of 2000s. Um, and so, yeah, it's always been about how do we have a bigger impact. Moved to Australia at some point. Started a startup a couple years later, um, and that's when, um, like another sort of one of those sort of major sort of steps, um, sort of clicked for me, right? It's like, and that's the and it had happened before, but still, certainly after that, right? One of the most powerful skills to have is understanding how a company makes money, right? If you want to help or improve a company, um, the most important thing by far, like more than any of the tech, more than any of everything, is like, how does this company make money? Um, because the no purpose of a company is to make money, right? And this may seem a bit weird to people, but like, companies don't exist to make money. They exist to make a change, um, and also, but you need money to sort of make that happen, right? So, and that's sort of like um, where it's super important. Like, how does this company make money, and how do I, as an individual, or I, as a leader of a team, like, what's my role in those things? Um, and that's by far, like, that's such an important thing to get right. Is that, um, how do we make money? How do we, get more customers in? How do we get more from, sort of, uh, money from our customers, right?
Yeah.
And that's where, I found there's a lack of knowledge is not necessarily, but it's hard to get those things and sort of understand them. And so that's why I'm this topic around like metrics and product metrics is so important,
Mm.
to me, um, because it's the only way you're going to get more impact as an engineering leader, is
Yeah.
by having an understanding of how the business works and how the business runs.
Yeah. And I think it's a cascade or even fractal in a certain sense of you could ask, how does the business make money, and a basic answer to that could be, well, customers pay you for the software. But then you've got to kind of go into that a little bit further, and you've got to understand, well, why do the customers pay money for the software?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
what
yeah.
what value is the software adding to them, and how is it helping them, and where does it fit into what they're doing as their jobs, and this becomes this like kind of cascading fractal of understanding the value of everything you're doing in this larger kind of mix of what's going on. I think it's like, this is a good segue to kind of, as engineers, we're kind of often thinking about our software in terms of, I guess, the technology metrics, and you work at Honeycomb, and a large part of Honeycomb is getting observability into a whole bunch of stuff, but one of them is the technology metrics that we're kind of used to as engineers, things like Dora and Space, where we're measuring how the system is functioning from a technology point of view, but that's not what we're talking about here. Can you
Oh,
kind of
no,
tell, like,
no,
let's
no.
just go into that a little bit, like, when we say product metrics, what kind of things are we talking about, and why are they important?
Um, so when I talk about product metrics, like, those are like your business metrics, right? Like, that's what they're directly, um, sort of tied to. Um, and so obviously, like, the the technical metrics, um, are important, but they're there for a supportive reason, right? And that's what I like what you're saying, right? Like, um, how do we add value to our customers? Like, why are they paying us money? Um, the way to think about it is, you can, unless you've got like a really manipulative and or illegal business, like, you can only capture a, um, some percentage of the value that you deliver to a customer, right? So I can't charge you $100 if you only feel like you're getting 20%, $20 worth of value out of this, right? And so that's why it's so important to figure out how can we deliver more value to customers, because we're only able to capture a certain percentage of whatever that percentage is. But you can't. So that's so important to understand. How do we deliver more value to those customers, and how do we get more customers? Right, like that's the sort of simple metrics, like a simple sort of mathematics of this, right? Like how do we get more customers and how do we get more money per customer, are the only two levers that you sort of have, broadly speaking. Um, and so, yeah, and that's like the case for a lot of sort of companies. So, how do you deliver value? And broadly speaking, there's only three ways to deliver value in any business whatsoever, right? Creating more revenue is the sort of obvious one. Protecting existing revenue, and this is only really useful if you're in a like market leader in a mature market, right? When you have a lot of money, like, you make a lot of money, and the most important and so an important thing to do is how do we not lose money, right? That we normally make. How do we don't lose customers? How do we not get fined? How do we not have sort of big regulators sort of coming? Second one is saving cost, and this is always done like the stupid dumb way, right? Where the best example I've seen of this is the is a bank that I worked in, that had free fruit and at one point restricted the amount of bananas you could get per person. Right? Like that, like it's that makes no difference to your bottom line.
Yeah.
The only if you're going to do cost savings, it's the like how do we save unit costs? Like how do we make this cheaper to deliver? How do we make this for everyone, not just the bananas? Because some people take two bananas after lunch, right?
Yeah, that's kind of an interesting, I guess, like angle of going into, the concepts of leading versus lagging indicators, and like, obviously revenue per customer and those kinds of very core, how much money are we making, are the things that, are the ultimate thing we care about, because if our business doesn't make money, then we don't have a job and we don't get to pay our bills. So like that's
Yep.
ultimately the thing we have to care about. But there's kind of leading indicators that might drive us towards that, and kind of see the things that are potentially happening in the future. So revenue per customer, for example, is something that can take a while to shake out. If you're say
Totally.
if you're a new entrant into a market, or if you're releasing a new product that you've not released before, that's obviously what you're going to care about in 6 to 12 to 18 to 24 months. But there's before you make those sales, there's all of the things to track and think about before you even get to that point, like the leading indicators of how many people are accessing the web page, how many people are signing up for a trial, how many people are talking about this. And I was thinking about a way to kind of have analogies in the technology space, and the best one I came up with is one of the DORA metrics, or let's like two of the DORA metrics that are important are lead time for changes and change failure rate. So lead time for changes, how long does it take for a commit to get into production? And then change failure rate of the things we get into production, what percentage of them fail? So, how many times do we deploy something that breaks production, basically?
Yeah,
And and they're great, kind of end state indicators, but then trying to think of like leading indicators for those, like you can think of something like PR size or PR complexity. It's like in and of itself, the size of a PR has no relation directly to the thing you actually care about, which is change failure rate or lead time for changes. But it's a leading indicator. If you have a higher PR size, it tends towards a higher lead time for changes. And I think those kinds of leading and lagging indicators we kind of get in tech, but it kind of, we lose this connection when we start. We think they're not the same thing, but they're fundamentally, the same concepts, just applied with a different lens.
yeah. Like it's a good example of like the difference between a lagging and a leading indicator, right? Like yeah, like um, the the leading indicator is the thing that doesn't give you um, sort of money in the bank right now, but confident, you're somewhat confident that it will give you money in the bank later, right? And that's where a lot of
Yeah,
this um, sort of comes in, very much in product as well.
yeah,
Um,
definitely.
and so there's a lot of those, right, where um, you've got if you're a freemium product, right, where you have a free tier and a sort of a pay tier, you lose money on your free users, right? Because they cost you money to serve, and they're not paying, right? So strictly speaking, you should try to reduce the amount of free users you have. But obviously, like that, um, what the whole plan is that we're going to get some percentage of those free users into paid users, and that will pay for like all of the free users that we then need to get in and sort of start to serve. And so yeah, like that's the sort of prototypical leading versus lagging indicator is the sort of total amount of how many free users do we have and do we sign up, because we we're confident that a certain percentage is going to start paying for it at some point.
Yeah, definitely. So RT is saying good morning in Japanese. Yes, I had to Google translate that. So good morning, RT. This is a good reminder that if you have any questions for Owen and I, please do post them. We can the benefit of a live stream as opposed to just a YouTube video or a video that gets uploaded to a platform somewhere is we do get to respond and answer your questions. So please, if you have any questions about product metrics or you want to know more about Honeycomb or Tech Leaders Launchpad, please just post your questions and we will get to them. If you want to speak other languages, just bear in mind, I will have to use Google Translate for 99.9% of the languages in the world. So bear with me.
I will happily read your Dutch questions.
Yeah.
Although I'm pretty sure you're asleep. Um,
Yeah, it's probably completely the wrong time zone for that. Like 12,
it
12
is.
hours opposite. Yeah. Cool. Okay. So I guess the next kind of follow on, if we're thinking about leading and lagging indicators, and we're thinking about how of course we can track the thing that we actually care about, the end goal, these lagging indicators, like number of page users.
Yeah, and we're good at that, right? Like
Yeah.
we usually have entire departments filled with people who are doing balance sheets and revenue recognition and like sort of everything else.
Yeah. But
Um,
like, how do you choose what those leading indicators are? And this is where, we can get into discussions around what's a vanity metric, like how and what isn't, and how do you kind of, rationalize which things should I care about when they don't have that direct connection between the actual revenue they generate. It's, by proxy and obfuscated in some way.
yeah, awesome questions. vanity metrics are it's a great term. Vanity metrics are metrics that look good because they go up to the right, right? Like we're growing, um, or we're improving, uh, without any sort of relationship between that and actual value generated. Um, um, and so, yeah, that might be our free user sign up, right? Like if we don't have a conversion rate where we're ever going to make back the money that we spend on those free users, the amount of free users that I have is useless, right? Like I will never, I'm never going to make my money back. Um, which is also leads to an interesting question, like an interesting sort of observation that like vanity metrics are very much like very often context specific, right? Um, and there, it's so yeah. If I am starting out, um, the amount of free users that I have might be not very useful, um, or page views, or like whatever your metric is, right? Like if you don't have healthy, if you don't have a healthy unit metrics, right? Like this is our conversion rate from free to paid, or yeah, the amount of free users you have is useless. The amount of page views you have is useless. Do you get paid per page view? I'm like, no, we get paid when people buy a subscription. I'm like, okay, like what's the relationship between page view and like paid subscriptions?
Mm.
Well, like we don't
Yeah.
know. I'm like, okay, so let's go find
Yeah.
out then, right? Because
I,
then it's a
I
useful metric.
I,
But
I can give a very concrete example of this.
yeah,
So,
awesome. Yeah,
when I first started getting into online training and kind of taking the skills that I've learned and creating training courses, the first thing I did before Tech Leaders Launchpad even existed as a company was I put together a bunch of training courses and put them on Udemy, which is an online
yeah,
marketplace, a two-sided marketplace for training courses. And I uploaded my training courses, and I'm getting thousands of people enrolling on those courses. And I'm thinking, oh my God, this is amazing. This is brilliant. Thousands of people looking at my content. And then I go in and I look at number of active learners and minutes taught per active learner, which are the actual metrics of making a change in people's lives. And what I
yeah.
find is that of the number of people that enroll in a course on Udemy, an average active learner is about 0.1%. So of the people that enroll in a course,
For every
0.1%
thousand,
for every thousand, one person looks at a lesson and
a lesson.
a lesson. And of people that look at a lesson, about 10% of people actually complete more than a handful of lessons.
Yeah,
And so, this is actually one of the reasons I created Tech Leaders Launchpad is I wanted to actually, help people, and I wanted to get it in front of a smaller group of people that cared more about it than just putting it up there and having thousands of people go, "Oh, that looks fun," enroll, and then never actually do anything about it. It's a vanity
this is a
metric.
is a great segment um, into like the biggest um, uh, like the one thing when you're talking about product metrics is like what's the one metric, like what's the one thing that we absolutely completely care about as a company, right? And um, for you that is like lives affected,
Yeah,
right?
exactly, exactly. Yeah.
Like how many people have I helped navigate this sort of terrain between a good individual contributor and a leader, manager of sort of teams, right? And then so that's the one metric that you care about and optimize for, and so yeah, like it's super helpful to um, in in any sort of business to figure out like what's the one metric, like what's the one thing that we sort of care about. Um,
Yeah.
Honeycomb is one of my favorite ones. We're about reducing the MTT WTF. Um,
Which is
the mean time to what the fuck. Um, this is where
yeah.
like you're looking at the data of um, your applications, and this is not just like your um, like HTTP response times, but also very much like how do we start tracking these product metrics that we'll be talking about. And every time I do a demo with like a customer's data, they go,
Mm.
"What's that?" And we go, "I don't know. Let's go, let's go explore. Let's go figure this out." And then you got like, "What do you mean?" Like, uh, I vividly remember doing a demo a couple years ago with a friend of mine. I wasn't even working at Honeycomb at the time, um, but I was talking to him about it, and yeah, he went, "You should go and do a demo." And um, yeah, showed him the graph, and they go like, what's that thing?" And I go, "I don't know. Let's find out." And these are your all of your sort of GIFs or GIFs,
Mm.
depending on what part of the world you're from. Um, and they go like, they can't take that long to load. I'm like, "No, but they do." I'm like, "But they're cached." And they're like, "No, they're not."
Mm.
Right, and that's so yeah. For Honeycomb, it's the mean time to what the fucks for customers, right? Like how can we show you your data in a way that um, you learn something, um,
Yeah.
and so yeah, like that's the most important thing. What's the one thing that your organization cares about?
Yeah. I think, there's we kind of dismissively called them vanity metrics, and for very, very good reason. But I think, they still can hold value. You just have to not lie to yourself what that value is. Like, to give you to use my example of Udemy, if we say, let's just use Tech Leaders Launchpad as an example. So, obviously my ultimate metric is people who I've helped, and careers that I've turned around, and that's the thing I care about. But to get there, people have to know about Tech Leaders Launchpad. They have to
Oh,
go onto it. They
totally.
have to sign up. Like, they have to do all of that stuff. I think it's just, if I looked at page views on Tech Leaders Launchpad, that's not, that's a means to an end. And understanding, I think, if we have a funnel of engagement, understanding where in that funnel things change, that can be useful. So, say for example, on Udemy, there's if I look at number of people who have engaged versus, sorry, the number of people who have enrolled versus the number of people who have looked at one lesson versus the number of people who have looked at multiple lessons, although they're all kind of different metrics and have different values, the a change in those things can give me information. So, say for example, I put exactly the same training course up there with very, very different copy and wording and images. The enrollment metrics, even though enrollment isn't ultimately the thing I care about, the enrollment metric difference between those does give me information.
Oh, but like a vanity metric is only a vanity metric if you don't have a way for that metric to impact the one metric that you care about, right? And you knew, right? Like if this many people enroll in a course, this many people are going to um, watch one, and so you had a line of sight, and just was like your funnel wasn't as efficient as you probably wanted it to be, right? Where I need to get 1,000 people in at the top of the funnel to get one person sort of out at the bottom. That feels very much like a Sisyphean sort of effort um, for very little work. And that's why I totally get where I'm like, this is not for me. It might be for others. And that's the other thing, right? Like, it's not like Udemy is necessarily bad. It just might not be for me. And so, yeah, that's sort of like what things are at. As long as you have, as long as you know how a particular metric is going to impact the one metric and then your actual sort of revenue. That's what's important, right?
Yeah.
Like, then anything that and those are then useful leading indicators, right? So, yeah,
I think
it's
there's
that.
there's something implicit. Like if we think about the two one metrics we've just discussed, honeycombs of MTT, WTF, and mine of lives changed. I think what's implicit in there that's worth making explicit is neither of those are revenue in our bank accounts.
Yeah.
It's all about the value added to people outside of the company. And this is one of the things that I think I got stuck on when I first started thinking about this kind of stuff. Is there's a tendency to think, oh well, this is just finance stuff, this is all about dollars and moving, and that stuff is important, but it kind of becomes demoralizing if that's all you think about, and if that's the only goal you're heading towards. And having your one metric be focused on the people you're helping is one of the ways that I found to kind of mitigate that as an individual and as a business owner. Is I often say to people when I talk about Tech Leaders Launchpad, like, I don't care how much money the business makes, I just care about how many people I've helped. Like, and the money, the money's
you like to pay your mortgage and
yeah, exactly.
buy some food occasionally.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, no, but this gets back to the sort of point we made before, right? Like, where you can only extract a percentage of the value that you deliver, and so focusing on the value that you deliver is a large part of that equation, right? Now it turns out that pricing is still like a very hard topic. That's an entirely sort of standalone sort of topic that we can talk about. But certainly from a like engineering sort of organizations, like the part to focus on is the how do we deliver more value to our customers, and pricing will. There's probably someone else in the organization that will sort pricing
Yeah.
out, unless you're a founder like sort of one of us, and it is your problem. Um, we'll let you know that it's also a hard problem.
It is. Yeah.
But yeah,
Let's just conscious of time where this is going. I say this
geez,
every
yeah.
live stream. It goes way quicker than I think it should. So one of the things that I've observed in the companies that I've worked in, and I'm curious if you've observed similar, there's often a disparity of information between engineering and other departments, and one of the ones that often causes the biggest impact is the disparity of information between engineering and customer success teams or support teams, whatever you want to call them. And they often get to see, like, they see a lot of problems that just never even make their way to engineering. And I've many times sat down with a customer support person and watched as they've helped a user work around a bug or a missing feature. And I say to them, oh, that's interesting. How often does that happen? And they say, oh, yeah, it happens like 10 times a day. We just tell the user to swing around in the
Do the
circle.
thing
And
that kind of,
yeah. And you're like, why have you never told us this? Like, is that something you've observed? And have you seen any good ways of kind of working around that problem?
I had working for a bank, another bank, and we're I'm there's a branch like right downstairs, and at one point I go into the branch and sort of ask if it's okay to bring one or two people down to that write the application that these people are using just to observe them. And at one point they so I bring them, it's okay, and I bring them down and we sit down and yeah. One particular flow is the um, person needs to redact something in a document that they've received. So they have a scanned PDF, and they need to like go and block out something. So they do. They block it out. PDF closes. They open it again. They go to the second thing they have to redact that, and the PDF closes. And so they open it again. And that happens 5 times. And but they go like, why does it close? And that's when someone goes and like, and then it turns out it's because they used to have to redact one thing, so they redacted the thing and they closed it, but they now have to redact 5 things.
Yeah.
And someone went like, this is like a 6-minute change.
Yeah.
Right. And so yeah, that was fixed later. And then it obviously took like 6 days to roll it out because it was a bank. But yeah, like it's that you're very correct. Like it's so um, uh, if there's one thing you can do is make friends like over at other departments, and this is actually like probably one of those other the big things that you can do and you should be doing. Like your job is as an engineering manager. It's not to be the best at tech, right? You've won it. You like congratulations. You've all won at tech, right? Like here's a medal. That's no longer the most important thing of the most important part of your job, right? I know we got you to where you are right now, but that's it. Like your job now is to like connect with the rest of the business, right? To connect with finance to figure out how the hell we're making money, with customer support to figure out like what our customers are sort of up to, with sales to figure out what the biggest pain points are, right? And that's your job now, right? It's to how do we interface with the rest of the business? How do we help them and support them in achieving things? So yeah, totally seen so many of those situations.
A piece of advice I give any kind of leader that's moving from one company to another is your job in the first sort of month or two is to speak to as many users as possible. Like they just get, because it just helps so much in those decision points of should we do this or that, should we do it this way or that way. If you don't have that context, it makes those decisions really 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 hard. And I think we're here to talk about metrics, because metrics are a way you can scale that knowledge, but you still miss a lot out. Like you still speaking to human to human, into
Yeah,
interactions
yeah, yeah.
are annoyingly still the highest bandwidth, the highest context ways of getting this information across.
Yeah. When I was a consultant, and that, like, for consultants, right? Like, it's even more important to talk to, like, everyone in very, very short period of time. Um, One of my um, best strategies was to go on smoke breaks, even though I have not smoked a cigarette in my entire life. Um, um, because they're all pariahs, and they're all like they're all sent outside at the same point, and so you get a like really interesting cross section of a company, if you go on smoke breaks, and it's hilarious to see people's faces when they go, "Do you Like, did you forget do you want a cigarette?" And you're like, "No, I don't smoke." I'm like, "What the fuck are you doing here?" I'm like, "I'm talking to random people." Um, and so, yeah, it's funny. Yeah, like, talk to other people, the rest of the organization, to your users, whenever you get the chance.
Yeah, I always found that harder in a consultancy than a product company, and I don't know why. I think it's part of it is, as a consultant, you're constantly moving between different companies, and you're having to generate and gain that context multiple times, and it just becomes something that, you're just moving between different things every 6 to 12 months. But I guess, like, that's an excuse to become better and quicker at it, and learn
Like,
it.
it's the I when I started out in consulting, I had this colleague that was just so incredibly good at connecting with customers and talking to some people. And so I asked him, like, "How do you do it?" And I still, to this day, remember his answer, which was, "You just, like, drink coffee with them. Like, you just ask if they want." Um, and so that was useless. Um, and then I got good at it. And if you now ask me, like, how to go about it, I'm pretty sure my answer is you, like, just get people, go and
Yeah.
drink coffee with them.
Yeah,
'Cause you
and
go,
and show a
like,
genuine interest, like actively
oh yeah,
listen.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like, I think that's something that, you say, oh yeah, yeah, but I think people
Oh,
forget to do
totally,
that.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But
you
it's
the
the
sorry, go on.
but yeah, it's that, yeah. You need to go and,
Yeah,
like, engage with them and just go, "Hey, I'd like to know more about this." And yeah, obviously,
yeah.
you then
I
also need to do the listening. But yeah, it's that reaching out bit. It's just ask,
mm, mm, yeah, yeah,
and sort of do it.
yeah.
Um, One of the things I wanted to sort of quickly chat about, sort of
Go for it.
before we need to sort of wrap this up, um, around metric specific. One of the best frameworks that I have used myself, and with lots and lots of companies, is there's a thing called pirate metrics. And they're called pirate metrics because the sort of abbreviation is AARRR. Um, and so what those are, and it's not a it's not a like, here's the 5 metrics that you need to care about. It's the five it's 5 metrics that are 5 groups, areas, that you need to think about, and they're all related
It's
to,
five
like, a funnel.
labels, and you
Yeah,
decide what those labels mean for you.
yeah, yeah. And so, the first one is sort of acquisition, right? Like, and which is basically is related to um, the cost of acquisition, right? Like, how much does it cost us to acquire a new customer, right? And this might be ads. Thanks, Andrew. I was figuring out. I'm like, I should probably Google this and put a link in the chat. Um, so it might be the cost of acquisition. It might be the number of customers. It might be um, daily active users. It might be whatever it is. But start to think about what are the most important ways that we get customers in the door, right? The next A is one of my favorites, and it's the most obscure one, and it's like activation. And activation is, how do I know from those people that got in the door that they are going to be how do I get them to be a good user, a good customer, right? And this is from your Udemy examples, right? Like enrollments are great, but like, how do I get them to watch the first video, right? Because if they watch the first video, 10% go on to watch more than one, right? And so, like, that's that sort of activation is the how do I get them to see the aha moment? Like, how do I get them to have that thing where it clicks and they go like, "Oh, this is for me." So that's what activation is. Um, Famously, Facebook's was, "Have you added 7 friends?" Right? Because they knew that once you've added 7 friends, you would never leave until they fucked it up. But that's an entirely different story, of course. But right, like, and so that's that. And for us, like in Honeycomb, that's the like your own data in Honeycomb, right? Like you can watch demos and it's great, and you'll go, oh, looks fun, right? Once you've seen your own data in Honeycomb, that's when you go, oh crap, this is different, right? And so that's what that is. Activation is people, it's clicking for people. And then we go to the R's, and I never know the order in which these are. But the easiest one is revenue, right? Which is what a lot of this is about. Again, it's not the purpose of your company, but you're not going to pay any of your bills without it, right? And then there's referral and retention, right? And that's the retention is how many people are going to stick around, right? And that's again for the Tech Labels Launchpad, how many repeat views do we get, right? How do we for us, Honeycomb, it's the how many people renew their subscription and keep using us. So, and that's like, and then there's a sort of couple different ways to sort of measure that. There's the sort of regular retention, which is how many percent of customers sign on again. And then another sort of interesting one is the what we call like the net dollar retention. And that's the for every like $100 worth of sort of revenue, how much are they spending now? And so that doesn't just take into account that people stick around, but also that they use more, right? So if you're doing well, like your net dollar retention is actually higher than 100%, because people get more value out of it. People spend more money at you, and so you can show that you're growing your. You're not just growing the total customer base, but also your revenue per customer.
Yeah, I think that's a useful one to think about. Is especially if you've got a product where there's additional monetization, either through service levels or additional licenses. It's not just it's often easier to upsell an existing customer than to find a brand new customer.
Oh boy, is that the case?
Yeah.
So yeah, but it could just be usage based, right? But yeah, like
Yeah, yeah,
whatever it is that you charge on, how do I grow um, revenue per customer? And again, just to like iterate, because I had a lot of um, challenges with this, like as a um, engineering like dev guy, right? Revenue isn't like there's nothing wrong with money, right? There's nothing wrong with talking about money and making more money and charging customers more money, um, as long as it's done in the we deliver them more value,
yeah, yeah,
right? I once was in a discussion at a telco where they decided not to send a particular notice to a particular subset of customers because then they would realize that they were still paying like the old price for the new thing. Like, that's bad. like,
yeah. No,
like that's the sort of business practices that's sort of terrible. And
yeah. What
it's not even like it's not illegal, but like it's definitely immoral.
when I
Um,
first started Tech Leaders Launchpad, I sold it at a particular price for about 6 months, and then I dropped the price. And then I went back and I emailed every single customer that signed up at the old higher price, and I changed them to the lower price, and I gave them a refund for the difference. It's like it's those things that are like make a big difference in the way that people view you as a company. That
oh
it's
yeah, yeah, yeah. But it's like, but that's like so. But yeah, like charging people money for value that you give them is is fine, right? And so um, I know that was very much a thing that sort of I was hung up on. I'm like,
yeah.
I don't do sales and money, and like that's not my problem. It turns out it is your problem. It certainly is your problem now as a
As a
leader and
leader.
a manager,
Yeah,
right? Like it
100%.
totally is your problem now.
Yeah.
And so that's retention, and then last one is referrals. Um, right? How many people are talking about you? Because it turns out that by far the best marketing you could possibly have and hope for is actual customers using you and recommending them to anyone
Yeah.
that would listen,
Yeah.
right? For a long time, I was Honeycomb's most successful salesperson in Australia. Um, and I wasn't even employed by them. It was just me talking about how amazing the product was.
And then they fixed
Um,
that.
and so, yeah, oh, yeah, but it's all like years later. It's funny because people will say, "I'm like, oh, yeah, you're biased um, for Honeycomb because you work there," and I go, "I'm like, you're correct that there is a direct causality." Uh,
It's the opposite way around to what you think it is.
it's just not the way that you think it is. But yeah, like, but that's what works, right? And so yeah, how do you get people? Not just how do you like making sure that people are happy enough with your stuff to talk about it, but also how do I make it? Are there things that I can do to like make that happen and sort of um, help with that?
Yeah. No, I think that's such a good point, and it's a perfect thing to end on. Like if you're a manager, thinking what should I learn about product metrics? Like what's CAC, what's LTV, like what are all of these things? Sure, learn that stuff, but start with the pirate metrics. They're a really great way to frame a lot of product metrics. So it's definitely worthwhile getting your head around. We
If you
have
do want to learn about CACs and COGS and instead of everything, I'm sure Andrew has something somewhere for that. But there's also a book called like the Personal MBA.
I've not heard of that.
Oh, it's great.
Cool. All right, we will share a link to that in the chat as well.
It's a very, very good read about OPEX, CAPEX, COGS, CAGs, and sort of
very nice.
LTVs. How many 3 and 4 other acronyms in the finance space can we come up with in the last minute?
I mean, to be fair, as engineers, we're just as bad, if not worse.
Oh, we are at least as bad as finance is.
All right, let's leave it there then. I think there's some great resources for people to go away and research and spend time on, which is great. Thank you very much, Owen, for this.
It was a pleasure.
A great chat. What I like to do at the end is to tell you about the stuff that we're doing at TLL. If you like this and you want to know more about what we're doing, if you want to know about the future live streams and the stuff that we're doing, there's that newsletter QR code there which you can sign up for. You'll get a no more than weekly email about what's happening with TLL, as well as an article every month, as well as a link to a bunch of leadership resources and interesting articles that I found around the internet that I want to share with you, as well as kind of what I'm doing around the world, the events that I'm going to, and the things that I'm running. So some of the things I'm running right now are in-person workshops around Australia and New Zealand. In person, I know, yeah. I love the remote world. I love kind of being all places at once, but sometimes you've just got to get in person and talk about this stuff. So I'm running a series of workshops around this kind of transition inflection point of leadership around Australia and New Zealand, as well as one around difficult conversations, feedback, conflict resolution, that kind of stuff. So if you want to know about that, that's the QR code on the left there. Next up for the live streams, I'm speaking to Anita about neurodiversity in tech teams, and we had a great live stream a couple of years ago on this topic. So I think it's time for us to kind of bring it back again and talk about it again. Things have changed a lot in the past couple of years, which is some of which is awesome to see, some of which is not so awesome to see. And so we're going to kind of tackle and dig into that and what it means to be a neurodiverse person in tech and what it means to lead neurodiverse people in tech. We're going to touch on both of those topics. Owen,
as a person with ADHD, I can tell you that I'm not the only one in tech. And ADHD is not the only neurodiversity there is. There's a lot. This is such an important topic.
Yeah, as somebody who is diagnosed on the autistic spectrum, I can also tell you I am not the only person in tech.
No, you're not.
No. Is there any places you want to send people, any links, Owen, of where you want people to reach out about you and learn about you and Honeycomb?
Find me on LinkedIn if you want to reach out. Happy to chat.
Cool. I will post that link as well. I'll just do that. There we go. All right. That just remains for me to thank you once again, Owen, for coming along. Thank you, everybody at home, for joining us. And we will see you next time on a Tech Leaders Launchpad live stream. See you later.
See ya.